This lesson is going to focus on integer operations with a specific focus on multiplying and dividing integers. There are three big things that you need to know in order to successfully multiply and divide integers. First of all, you need to know how to multiply numbers. Second of all, you need to know how to divide numbers. And third, you need to know the rules for multiplying and dividing integers. Now, we're going to specifically focus on the rules in this lesson, but remember, if you're struggling with multiplying and dividing integers, there are a lot of resources out there that could really help you practice. You can create flashcards. You can go online and do some practices on the websites. You can go online and watch some videos to help show you how to multiply and divide. There's a ton of different resources. One big thing that I would suggest is maybe creating flashcards with multiplication facts on them and spending about 5 to 10 minutes each night, not going over all of them, but maybe picking out 10 to 15 of them and just practicing them until you have mastered them. Now, in order to focus on the rules, what you do need to know is that the rules for multiplying and dividing integers are exactly the same. So it's very different than adding and subtracting. There's two big differences actually. Number one, these are a little bit easier because you're just multiplying and dividing numbers and you're applying some rules onto them, but also you're only memorizing or you're only understanding one set of rules for two different operations, whereas addition and subtraction each had their own separate rules. So first we're going to take a look at these rules, and I apologize that they're a little all over the place, and this one's actually missing. But a negative divided by a negative, well, let's see if a positive, here we go. If a negative times a negative is a positive, then that means that a negative divided by a negative is also going to be a positive. So this should actually be positive right here. Now, a positive times a positive is a positive, and you've always known that. 5 times 3 is 15. Those are two positive numbers that equal one positive number. So don't get that confused with your adding integers operations. When you're multiplying, a positive times a positive is a positive, and a negative times a negative is a positive. So in other words, multiplying and dividing two numbers with the same signs are going to give you a positive answer. Now when you're looking at the different signs, so a negative times a positive or a negative divided by a positive, you're going to get a negative. Same with a positive times a negative or a positive divided by a negative, a negative. So what could you take away from if the numbers have two different signs? That's correct. Multiplying and dividing two numbers with different signs equals a negative answer. I've also shared before Mr. Multiple Vision. Mr. Multiple Vision is a tool that can help you remember the rules for multiplying and dividing integers. Now remember how this works. You have two negative signs as the eyes and a plus sign as the mouth or the nose, however you look at it. And the reason why we don't need another plus sign is because we already know that two positives equal a positive. And when you're using Mr. Multiple Vision, all you have to do is you have to cover up the two signs of the problem. So for example, let's say we had a question, -2 times -4. We have a -2, so I would cover up this negative, and we have a -4, so I would cover up this one, leaving the positive sign open. So that would tell me that a negative times a negative is a positive. If you had a question such as -2 times +1, we would cover up the negative for the -2. We would cover up the positive for the +1, but we would still have a negative left open. So that would tell us that our answer would be negative. So how is this done? First, you're going to calculate the two numbers by either multiplying or dividing. depending on what's in the problem. Then you're going to determine the sign of your answer based on the signs in the problem. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this in this order, and eventually you won't even need steps because it'll just become natural to you, as 2 times 2 is 4 is natural to you. So basically, just make sure that when you're doing this, you're looking at the two numbers, you're looking at the operation that you're performing, you calculate it, and don't forget your sign. That is very important, not to forget that sign on your final answer. So for an example, here we have -5 times +3. If I'm looking at the steps, first calculate by multiplying or dividing. This is multiplying, so 5 times 3 is 15. And then I'm going to determine the sign of our answer. So negative and a positive, those are different signs, so my answer is going to be a negative. And then if I have a question, -21 divided by -7, again, first I'm going to calculate by multiplying or dividing. So 21 divided by 7 is 3. Then I'm going to determine the sign of our answer based on the signs in the problem. So a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Remember, you can go back and rewatch this video when you need to. You can pause it, you can review it. It's always going to be available to you. So be sure you use it as much as you need to.